各位好，欢迎收看凤凰卫视每周台为您带来的天天话题栏目。那么，负责2014年南加大 USC 中国留学生纪欣然谋杀案的洛杉矶县检察官长 McKinney 最近是宣布呢，将向洛县检察长贾斯康宣战，加入2024年洛杉矶县地区检察长的选战。那么，在今天节目当中呢，我们特别为您邀请到了他洛县的检察官长 McKinney。Hi, John. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, John, let's start by discussing your decision to run against the incumbent DA, George Gascon. Now, tell us what motivated you to run and what do you believe sets you apart from your opponent?
No, thank you. I'm running because I want a city that is safe. I want a city where families and businesses can thrive, where children can play outside or go to the park without fear of injury or harm. I've been a deputy district attorney for 25 years. I don't like the direction that our community is moving in. And so I want to bring my experience and what I've learned over the last 25 years to the job to bring a sense of balance and community and fairness back to the system.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the prominent cases you prosecuted was the Shiranji murder case, which deeply impacted the Chinese community in LA. Now, walk us through the key aspects of this case and how it has shaped your approach to seeking justice for victims and their families.
Yes, that was one of the most tragic and heartbreaking cases that I ever prosecuted. I'll have to take the audience back to July of 2014. Where a young man named Shinranji was visiting Los Angeles as a student at USC from China. He was a brilliant young man, an engineering student, but also with a very sensitive and creative side. He was also quite a good photographer. And he was at a study group one night, just off campus. The study group went late. Being the gentleman that he was, he offered to walk one of his classmates to her home, not far away. And on his way back, walking alone, he got confronted by 4 teenagers who were driving around looking for someone to rob. When they saw Shinran by himself, they targeted him, they accosted him, and ultimately they beat him to death using a baseball bat and a wrench. Just very, very tragic, horrible, horrific circumstance.
Now, in light of the Shiranji case, how do you plan to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the Chinese community in LA? Now, tell us what specific measures you will take to ensure better communication and understanding.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot about that case. I got very familiar with the Chinese community, both the media and the community at USC and throughout the city. One thing that I learned is that the district attorney's office is not connected to the Chinese community or the Asian community in general. One of the things that I will do as DA is get out of the office and into the community where people can see me and talk to me directly. We need greater collaboration between community leaders, police leaders, and the district attorney's office. We need to bridge the language gap. There are many people who don't speak English in the community and many people like me who don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese or any of the other dialects. So we have to introduce interpreters and translators into our communication. We have to print materials so that people can read them and understand them. There's a lot of things that we have to do to bring the Chinese community and the Asian community in general closer to government and working together.
Now, many in the Chinese community, they were actually very vocal about, their concerns during the Shiranji trial regarding cultural sensitivity and language barriers. So how do you plan to address, these challenges to ensure, fair representation and a more inclusive, justice system for everyone?
Right. We need to get lawyers in every neighborhood, in every community. And what I would endeavor to do is make sure I hire enough Chinese prosecutors, people who are culturally aware and sensitive, people who speak the language, to be embedded in the neighborhood, not have an office downtown, but in the neighborhood where they can be close to people on a daily basis and communicate as a liaison between the community and me to let me know what the concerns are, what the problems are, what they need to have addressed. We don't have that now. We definitely need to introduce that right away.
Now, during your tenure as a prosecutor, tell us what steps did you take to strengthen the relationship, between law enforcement agency and local communities How will you build upon, this experience to enhance community engagement as a DA?
Well, I've been very successful as a deputy DA over the years in personally making myself available to my victims, to witnesses, to going out to the communities where crimes occur, understanding the lay of the land and the people who live there. As an office, we haven't been very good at that, meaning the leadership of the office hasn't been very good at that. That's one thing I will change when I become the next district attorney. I think that engagement with the community, the collaboration and partnership is necessary for us to know what is going on in that neighborhood and empower the people there to help us help them address those problems.
Thank you, John. Before we continue our conversation, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. 那我们先休息下，进入广告。广告过后呢，我们再来继续今天的天天话题，不要离开。感谢回来，在今天的节目当中呢，我们继续为您邀请到的是挑战贾斯康竞选2024年洛杉矶县检察长的 John McKinney. Now, John, let's begin with criminal justice reform. So, it has been a very hot topic in recent years. Where do you stand on the key issues, such as bail reform, sentencing guidelines, Prop 47 and alternatives to incarceration? How do you plan to strike a balance between public safety, and the need for progressive reforms?
Everything that we do has to be tethered to accountability. And I'm open to different ideas about how to approach bail and sentencing and Prop 47. But whatever we do, it has to be rooted in accountability. Now, when it comes to bail reform, there are just some people who are so dangerous, or they just won't follow the law, that they need to be incarcerated. There are other people who are, they're first-time offenders. They don't have much of a record. They don't pose a threat to anybody. We don't need to lock those people up. But for the people who won't follow the law or are dangerous, we do. When it comes to sentencing, I believe in proportional justice. That means we look at the crime, we look at the offender, and we find the right sentence, the right degree of punishment, and the right degree of rehabilitation that makes sense for that person. You mentioned Prop 47. Prop 47 has been a disaster for California. Prop 47 is allowing people to steal up to about $1,000 worth of merchandise, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day with impunity. And when you combine Prop 47 with zero bail, it's like a revolving door of theft. It's hurting people. It's hurting our businesses. Our businesses are having to close down. They can't hire workers. Sometimes there's violence that breaks out in these stores because of the thefts. It's all been terrible. So I think the kind of reforms that we have been seeing over the past 4 or 5 years have not been progressive. They've been regressive. They're taking us back to a darker time when crime was defining how we lived our lives.
Now, the role of technology in legal system is actually becoming increasingly important. How do you envision leveraging technology and data to improve the efficiency and, effectiveness of the DA's office?
We have to dive right into technology. There's a lot of technology available right now that could make us more efficient and save taxpayers a lot of money. We're not using it. We're also using a lot of outdated equipment. Our computers are probably 4 or 5 generations behind what's currently on the market. Wow. So as district attorney, one of my initiatives will be to dive into and embrace technological changes that will allow us to do more in a shorter period of time for less money.
Now, if elected, what specific policy do you intend to implement, to address the rise in violent crimes and, ensure the safety of all residents in LA?
Well, as a general matter, we just have to get back to the basics of prosecuting crimes when they happen and not worry about the politics or ideology. We look at the police reports and the evidence, and if we see a crime, we take it to court and we prove the crime and get the right consequences. This isn't rocket science. This isn't very difficult to do. one of the things that's happening now that's leading to the increase of crime is we have a district attorney who's not really interested in prosecuting crime. He's more interested in helping people who commit crime. I know that's a strange thing to say and believe, but that is actually what is happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of which, we know George Gascon's tenure has been marked by a significant reduction in prosecutions for certain offenses. What is your perspective on this approach? And, how do you plan to strike the right balance between prosecution rates and pursuit of justice?
I don't believe in nullifying the law. I believe that it's the DA's job to follow the law. So, for example, where George Gascon does not prosecute anyone under 18 for theft, I believe that you have to prosecute everyone who commits theft. Now, how you prosecute them and what you do afterwards depends on the person. Some people don't need anything more than probation. Some people need probation and community labor or something else to prevent them from committing the crime again in the future. But you just can't ignore crime. At this moment, it's legal to use hard drugs in Los Angeles County. Cocaine, fentanyl, meth, PCP. George Gascon will not prosecute any of it. As a result, we're not able to get those people into drug treatment because they're never coming into the court system in the first place.
Now, finally, John, in a diverse county like Los Angeles, representation and cultural sensitivity are very crucial. Now, how will you ensure that all communities, including the Chinese community, have a voice and are equally served by the DA's office?
Well, I think our office has to reflect the community. So we have to make sure, first of all, we have Chinese Americans working for the attorney's office. And that's true, reflective of every group. And not just people who have a certain surname, but people who actually understand the community, are sensitive to the community, and are able to go into the community and be trusted, so that people will open up to them and tell us what they need. So my workforce will reflect the community. I'll make sure I hire Chinese lawyers, Korean lawyers, Japanese lawyers, Filipino lawyers. And we do right now, we have a pretty diverse group of lawyers in the DA's office, but there's still some work to do. And not just hire them, but promote them into positions of power where they can do more for the office and the community.
Now, thank you, John, for your dedication to justice and the safety of our communities. John McKinney, running for LA District Attorney, we appreciate you taking the time, and of course, we'll be following this election closely. 同时也非常感谢各位的收看，我们下期同一时间再见。
Thank you.
您正在收看的是凤凰卫视。